The first time I saw her, she emerged from the crystalline mist like a shard of frozen starlight. Her presence was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a paradox that left me breathless. The air around her seemed to crackle with frost, each step she took sending delicate ripples through the icy expanse beneath her feet. She was tall, far taller than any human woman. Her lithe form draped in translucent veils that shimmered as though woven from glacial ice itself. Her skin, no, not skin, but something smoother and colder, reflected the dim light of the alien suns overhead, casting prismatic hues across the cavernous chamber where we stood. Her eyes were what truly held me captive. They weren't merely cold. They burned with an intensity that pierced straight through my soul, twin pools of liquid sapphire rimmed with silver frost. There was no warmth in them, no trace of compassion or mercy. Yet there was something else, a depth, an ancient wisdom that hinted at secrets older than time itself. It was impossible to look away, even though every instinct screamed at me to flee. I had been brought before her against my will, captured by her warriors during one of their raids on our colony ship. We had ventured too close to their territory, seeking refuge after our engines failed in deep space. What we found instead was a world encased in eternal winter, ruled by beings who seemed more elemental force than flesh and blood. And now, here I stood, trembling before this queen whose very existence defied comprehension. She moved closer, her gait fluid yet deliberate, each motion imbued with grace and power. Her voice, when it came, was unlike anything I'd ever heard, low and resonant, carrying a melody that echoed off the walls like the song of glaciers shifting under unimaginable pressure. "You are trespassers," she said, her words sharp as shards of glass. "Your kind has no place here." Her tone brooked no argument, but I couldn't help myself. My survival instincts kicked in, overriding the paralyzing fear gripping my chest. "We didn't mean to intrude," I stammered, my own voice sounding weak and pitiful in comparison. "Our ship malfunctioned. We needed help." Her gaze narrowed slightly, those piercing eyes boring into mine as if searching for lies buried deep within my soul. For a moment, I thought she might strike me down then and there, her slender hand twitching as though itching to summon some unseen weapon. But she did nothing, only stared, her expression unreadable. It was then that I noticed the faint glow emanating from her fingertips, tiny motes of light dancing along her palms like captive stars. The sight filled me with awe and dread. Whatever she was, whatever powers she wielded, she was beyond anything humanity could comprehend. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against me, I felt a strange pull toward her, a curiosity that refused to be silenced. As she turned away, dismissing me with a flick of her wrist, I realized something profound. She wasn't just a ruler or a conqueror. She was something far greater, an embodiment of the frozen world she commanded, its beauty and brutality made manifest. And though I feared her more than anything else in the universe, part of me yearned to understand her, to unravel the mysteries hidden behind those frigid eyes. In the days, or perhaps weeks, that followed, I learned what it meant to live under the shadow of the alien queen. Time blurred together in the endless twilight of her realm, where the suns never fully rose or set, leaving everything bathed in a perpetual gloom. Her warriors, towering figures clad in armor forged from the same shimmering material as her veils, kept a constant watch over us prisoners. They spoke little, communicating instead through gestures and guttural sounds that reverberated like distant avalanches. Their presence alone was enough to keep us compliant, their weapons humming with latent energy that promised swift and merciless retribution for any act of defiance. My interactions with the Queen herself were rare but unforgettable. She would appear without warning, her arrival heralded by a sudden drop in temperature that sent shivers racing down my spine. Sometimes she came alone, gliding silently through the corridors of her fortress like a ghost. Other times, she was accompanied by her retinue of advisors and guards, their movements synchronized in eerie precision. Each visit left me feeling smaller, more insignificant, as though I were nothing more than a speck of dust caught in the wake of a storm. Despite her apparent disdain for my species, the Queen displayed a peculiar interest in me. While the other captives were forced into labor, hauling blocks of ice or repairing damaged machinery, I was spared such tasks. Instead, I was summoned to her throne room, a vast chamber carved directly into the heart of a glacier. Its walls sparkled with embedded crystals, refracting the dim light into dazzling patterns that danced across the floor. At its center loomed her throne, a massive construct of jagged ice that seemed to grow organically from the ground beneath it. There, she would question me about Earth, about humanity's history and culture. Her inquiries were relentless, probing deeper than I thought possible given the language barrier between us. Somehow, she understood my halting explanations, piecing together fragments of information until she had constructed a rudimentary understanding of our world. She asked about war and peace, about love and loss, about art and science. Some questions baffled me entirely, forcing me to confront gaps in my own knowledge. Others cut too close to home, dredging up memories I had long tried to bury. Through these exchanges, I began to see glimpses of something beneath her icy exterior. When she spoke of her people, her voice softened ever so slightly, the edges of her words losing some of their razor-sharp bite. She told me stories of their migrations across the stars, of how they sought out worlds untouched by corruption, places where purity still reigned supreme. Her pride in her lineage was evident, though tempered by a melancholy I couldn't quite grasp. It was as if she carried the weight of countless generations on her shoulders, bound by duty to preserve what remained of their legacy. Yet for all her revelations, she remained an enigma. Her emotions, if she possessed them at all, were tightly controlled, revealed only in fleeting moments when her guard slipped. Once, while recounting the fall of a neighboring civilization, her fingers trembled imperceptibly, the glow in her palms flickering like dying embers. Another time, when describing the rituals of her ancestors, her gaze softened, almost wistful, before snapping back to its usual steely resolve. These subtle shifts intrigued me, fueling my growing fascination with her. Living among her people also exposed me to the harsh realities of their society. Discipline was absolute, enforced with brutal efficiency. Those who disobeyed faced swift punishment, often delivered by the queen herself. I witnessed one such incident firsthand, when a young warrior challenged her authority during a council meeting. Without hesitation, she raised her hand, and a bolt of freezing energy shot forth, encasing him in a cocoon of ice. He didn't scream, didn't struggle, just froze mid-motion, his expression locked in a mask of defiance. The other warriors bowed their heads in silent acknowledgement, neither celebrating nor condemning the act. To them, it was simply justice. And yet, amidst the cruelty, there were moments of unexpected kindness. On several occasions, I caught glimpses of her tending to injured members of her court, her touch gentle despite the chill radiating from her hands. She sang softly as she worked, her voice weaving intricate melodies that seemed to mend wounds faster than logic dictated. Watching her care for others stirred conflicting feelings within me, admiration mingled with unease, gratitude overshadowed by lingering fear. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, my perception of her began to shift. No longer was she solely the tyrant who held me captive, nor the mysterious figure whose motives eluded comprehension. She became something more complex, a being shaped by forces I could barely imagine. And though I knew better than to trust her completely, I couldn't deny the connection forming between us, a fragile thread spun from shared experiences and mutual curiosity. One fateful day, everything changed. A group of rebels within the ranks of the Queen's warriors staged a daring uprising, driven by whispers of discontent that had simmered beneath the surface for cycles uncounted. They struck during the night of frozen stars, a sacred observance when the entire populace gathered in the grand hall to witness the alignment of celestial bodies above. The air was thick with anticipation, the crystalline ceiling above us reflecting the celestial dance in dazzling patterns. As the ceremony reached its zenith, chaos erupted. The rebels, cloaked in shadows cast by the luminous display, launched their assault with startling ferocity. Energy blasts tore through the serene atmosphere, shattering the delicate balance of order. Amidst the pandemonium, I found myself cornered, my path blocked by both loyalists and insurgents. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, she appeared, her regal form cutting through the turmoil like a blade of pure ice. Without a word, she extended her hand towards me, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that demanded obedience. Instinctively, I grasped it, feeling the biting cold sear into my palm. In that instant, a surge of power coursed through me, unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was as if her essence flowed into me, awakening dormant senses and sharpening my awareness to an extraordinary degree. Together, we moved as one, navigating the battlefield with uncanny precision. As we fought side by side, The true extent of her abilities became clear. With graceful sweeps of her arms, she conjured barriers of solid ice, deflecting attacks meant for us. Her voice rose above the din, commanding her loyal warriors with authority that brooked no dissent. Yet, it was not her prowess in battle that left the deepest impression. It was the way she shielded me, placing herself between me and danger time and again. During a brief lull in the fighting, we found ourselves momentarily isolated, surrounded by fallen foes and shattered remnants of the once pristine hall. Breathing heavily, I turned to her, my mind struggling to process the whirlwind of events. "Why?" I gasped, my voice barely audible over the residual echoes of conflict. "Why protect me?" Her gaze softened, though only marginally. "You carry something within you," she replied, her voice low and resonant, a spark of resilience that mirrors the core of my own being. She paused, tilting her head as if listening to some distant melody only she could hear. "Perhaps, in saving you, I save a fragment of myself." The admission startled me, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't suspected. Before I could respond, another wave of attackers descended upon us. This time, however, I felt different, empowered. Drawing upon the newfound strength she had bestowed, I fought alongside her with a vigor that surprised even myself. Our combined efforts turned the tide, driving the rebels back until reinforcements arrived to quell the rebellion entirely. When the dust settled and silence reclaimed the hall, the Queen surveyed the aftermath with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. Turning to me, she placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch lighter yet still chilling. "You have proven yourself," she said, her voice tinged with something akin to respect. "Not just as a survivor, but as someone worthy of trust." In that moment, standing amidst the ruins of what had been a symbol of unity, I realized that my bond with the alien queen had transcended mere captivity and curiosity. It had evolved into something profound and inexplicable, a partnership forged in the crucible of adversity. Though the road ahead remained fraught with uncertainty, I knew one thing for certain: whatever destiny awaited us, we would face it together. As the days stretched into weeks, the bond between us deepened, nurtured by shared silences and stolen glances. The Queen, formidable and enigmatic, began to reveal layers of her character that I had scarcely imagined. During quiet moments in her private chambers, surrounded by the soft glow of bioluminescent flora, she would speak of her dreams, not the ambitions of conquest or dominion, but visions of a world where her people could thrive without the specter of extinction looming over them. Her voice, usually so commanding, would soften, betraying a vulnerability that made her seem almost human. I, in turn, shared fragments of my own life, tales of Earth's sprawling cities and verdant landscapes, of laughter and loss, of hopes dashed and dreams reborn. Each story seemed to resonate with her, sparking questions that delved deeper than mere curiosity. She wanted to understand not just the facts, but the emotions, the intangible threads that wove humanity together. It was during these exchanges that I realized how much we mirrored each other, two souls adrift in a vast universe, seeking connection amidst isolation. Yet, our growing closeness did not go unnoticed. Whispers rippled through the ranks of her court, speculations swirling like snowflakes in a tempest. Some viewed our alliance with suspicion, interpreting it as a sign of weakness on her part. Others saw potential, a bridge between two disparate worlds that could usher in an era of unprecedented cooperation. Among the most vocal dissenters was Valeth, a high-ranking commander whose loyalty to the Queen was matched only by his disdain for outsiders. His piercing gaze followed me wherever I went, his disapproval palpable even from across crowded halls. Valeth's animosity culminated one evening during a gathering in the Great Hall. As the assembled throng celebrated a recent victory against marauding raiders, he approached us, his stance rigid with barely contained hostility. "My queen," he began, his voice dripping with thinly veiled contempt, "surely you do not intend to let this creature influence your decisions further?" The queen's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing to slits of icy blue. "Valeth," she replied, her tone frostier than the air around us, "your concerns are noted, but misplaced. This human has proven invaluable, offering insights that benefit us all." Valeth bristled, his fists clenching at his sides. "Insights? Or distractions? We cannot afford weakness, especially not now, when threats loom on every horizon." Before the Queen could respond, I stepped forward, emboldened by the courage she had instilled in me. "I may be human," I said, meeting his glare head-on, "but I am no threat to your people. If anything, I seek to help, to build bridges rather than walls." For a tense moment, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the unfolding confrontation. Then, to everyone's surprise, Velith laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed off the crystalline walls. "Bridges," he sneered. "You think you can span the chasm between us? You are a fool, human, and your naivety will be your undoing." With that, he turned on his heel and strode away, leaving a trail of tension in his wake. The queen watched him go, her jaw tightening with restrained anger. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but resolute. "Do not let his words unsettle you. He is a relic of a bygone era, clinging to outdated beliefs. Change is inevitable, and he will come to accept it, or fade into obscurity." Though her reassurance bolstered my spirits, I couldn't shake the feeling that Velith's animosity marked the beginning of a larger conflict. His words lingered in my mind, planting seeds of doubt that gnawed at the edges of my newfound confidence. Was I truly capable of bridging the gap between our species, or was I merely deluding myself? The weight of expectation pressed down on me, heavier with each passing day. Still, amidst the uncertainty, one truth remained steadfast. The queen believed in me. Her faith was a beacon, guiding me through the storms of doubt and fear. Together, we continued to navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy and discovery, forging a path that neither of us could have envisioned alone. And though the journey ahead promised challenges aplenty, I clung to the hope that our combined strength would see us through, for her sake and for mine. As the seasons shifted in the frozen realm, marked by subtle changes in the auroras that danced above the glaciers, the queen and I embarked on a series of explorations that took us beyond the confines of her fortress. She led me through labyrinthine tunnels carved by ancient rivers of ice, their walls adorned with intricate carvings that told stories of her people's past. Each glyph and symbol was a testament to their resilience, chronicling battles fought and victories won against the encroaching darkness of entropy. During these expeditions, she revealed facets of her personality that few, if any, had ever witnessed. Away from the prying eyes of her court, she allowed herself moments of levity, her laughter, a rare and hauntingly beautiful sound, echoing through the caverns. She taught me the names of the constellations visible from her world, their patterns etched into the night sky like celestial maps guiding lost travelers home. Through her teachings, I began to see the universe through her eyes, vast and unfathomable yet interconnected in ways that defied logic. Our adventures often brought us to the edge of peril, testing the limits of our bond. Once, while traversing a precarious ridge overlooking a bottomless chasm, a sudden avalanche threatened to sweep us away. Without hesitation, she anchored herself to the rock face, extending her arm to pull me to safety. Her grip was unyielding, her determination unwavering. As we stood together, catching our breath amidst the debris, I realized how much I had come to rely on her, not just for protection, but for guidance and companionship. Back within the fortress, our relationship continued to evolve, drawing curious glances from those who observed us. Some of her advisors, initially skeptical of my presence, began to warm to the idea of collaboration, recognizing the value of fresh perspectives. They engaged me in discussions about resource management and technological innovation, seeking solutions to problems that had long plagued their society. Though progress was slow, the seeds of change were taking root, nurtured by the Queen's unwavering support. However, not all embraced this new direction. Velith's opposition grew more vocal, his rhetoric gaining traction among certain factions within the court. He orchestrated clandestine meetings, rallying supporters to his cause with promises of restoring traditional values and purging foreign influences. His actions cast a shadow over our efforts, threatening to undermine the fragile harmony we had begun to establish. One evening, as we sat together in her private chambers, the Queen confided in me her fears about the growing unrest. "Change is never easy," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the flickering lights outside. "But it is necessary. If we cling too tightly to the past, we risk stagnation and eventual demise." Her words resonated deeply, echoing my own thoughts on the matter. "Then we must persevere," I replied, reaching out to take her hand. "Together, we can overcome whatever obstacles lie ahead." She smiled faintly, her fingers tightening around mine. "Yes, together." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the fortress and the distant symphony of the stars, I felt a profound sense of purpose. Whatever trials awaited us, I knew that our partnership, forged in adversity and strengthened by trust, would endure. For in the heart of the icy expanse, amidst the crystalline splendor of her domain, I had found something unexpected, a home, and a queen who defied every expectation. The days that followed were a delicate dance between progress and resistance. The queen's reforms began to take shape, small yet significant shifts in the way her people interacted with one another and with the world around them. She introduced new methods of resource allocation, ensuring that even the most remote outposts received their fair share of supplies. She encouraged open dialogue among her advisors, fostering an environment where dissenting opinions could be voiced without fear of retribution. And she tasked me with leading initiatives aimed at bridging the gap between our species, from teaching basic human languages to sharing rudimentary technologies that could improve daily life. But for every step forward, there was pushback. Valeth and his followers grew bolder, their discontent spilling into public forums. They accused the queen of compromising the purity of their culture, of diluting their identity by embracing foreign ideas. Their rhetoric struck a chord with some, particularly the older generations who clung to traditions as a lifeline in an ever-changing universe. Protests erupted in the lower districts of the fortress, voices raised in defiance of what they saw as heretical change. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the icy plains, the queen summoned me to her throne room. Her expression was grave, her usual composure tinged with unease. "The unrest is spreading," she said, her voice low and measured. "Valeth has called for a council meeting tomorrow. He intends to challenge my leadership." I felt a chill run down my spine, though it had nothing to do with the temperature. "What will you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face me, her sapphire eyes reflecting the dim light like shards of broken glass. "I will defend my decisions," she replied, her tone firm. "But I cannot do this alone. I need your help." Her words caught me off guard. "My help? How?" "You have seen the best and worst of both our worlds," she explained. "You understand the fears that drive my people, the hopes that sustain yours. Speak for me when I cannot. Show them that unity is not weakness, it is strength." I nodded, though doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve. What could I, a mere human, offer in the face of such entrenched opposition? Yet, as I looked into her eyes, I saw not just a ruler but a partner, someone who believed in me despite all odds. And so, I agreed. The council chamber was a vast, circular hall carved from translucent ice, its walls glowing faintly with the light of embedded crystals. When we entered, the air was thick with tension, the assembled courtiers exchanging wary glances. At the center of the room stood Valeth, his towering frame clad in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished frost. His gaze locked onto us as we approached, his lips curling into a sneer. "Ah, the queen and her pet human," he drawled, his voice dripping with disdain. "How fitting that you bring him here, to witness your downfall." The queen ignored his taunt, ascending the dais with regal poise. "This gathering is not about me or my decisions," she said, addressing the crowd. "It is about the future of our people. Do we cling to the past, or do we embrace the possibilities before us?" Valeth stepped forward, his movements deliberate and calculated. "Possibilities," he spat. "You call this betrayal progress? You would trade our heritage for the whims of outsiders, weaken us with their softness and uncertainty." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some nodding in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably. The queen raised a hand, silencing the room with a gesture. "Change does not mean weakness," she countered. "It means adaptation, survival. Our ancestors understood this. They traveled the stars in search of new beginnings. Are we so different?" Before Valeth could respond, I stepped forward, drawing startled looks from the assembly. "Your queen speaks the truth," I said, my voice steady despite the weight of their stares. "I have seen the strength of your people, their resilience and ingenuity. But I have also seen their pain, the divisions, the mistrust, the fear of what lies beyond these frozen walls. These are not signs of strength, they are chains holding you back." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd, but I pressed on. "The human race has faced similar struggles. We have fought wars, endured plagues, and rebuilt ourselves time and again. And each time, we emerged stronger, not because we resisted change, but because we embraced it. Together, we can do the same. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, one of the elder council members spoke up, his voice trembling with emotion. "He speaks wisely," he said, addressing the queen. Perhaps there is merit in his words." Vailitha's face darkened with fury, but before he could retaliate, another voice joined the chorus, a young warrior who had once been among his staunchest supporters. "If the human can stand beside us, why should we fear change?" she challenged, her gaze defiant. "Let us hear more of what he has to say." The tide began to turn, slowly but surely. One by one, voices rose in support of the Queen's vision, echoing my plea for unity and understanding. Vailitha's grip on the crowd wavered, his confidence faltering under the weight of collective hope. Though the battle was far from won, a crack had formed in the wall of resistance, a chink of light piercing the darkness. As the meeting drew to a close, the Queen descended from the dais, her expression unreadable. She motioned for me to follow her, and together we retreated to the privacy of her chambers. Once inside, she sank onto a crystalline bench, her shoulders slumping slightly, a rare display of vulnerability. "You did well," she said after a long pause, her voice soft. "Better than I could have hoped." I sat beside her, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over me. "I only said what I believe," I replied. "That's all any of us can do." She turned to look at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You've given them hope," she whispered. "And in doing so, you've given me something I thought I'd lost." Her words stirred something deep within me, a warmth that spread despite the chill of the room. For the first time, I realized how much I had come to care for her, not just as a leader or an ally, but as someone who carried the burdens of her people with quiet grace. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them by her side. Outside, the auroras flared to life, painting the sky with ribbons of color that danced like living flames. It was a reminder that even in the coldest reaches of the universe, beauty and possibility endured. And as I watched the lights shimmer against the endless expanse of ice, I felt a flicker of optimism, a belief that together, we could forge a future brighter than either of us had dared to imagine. In the weeks that followed, the Queen's reforms gained momentum, her people beginning to see the value in adaptation and unity. Vailitha's influence waned, his once unshakable resolve crumbling under the weight of collective progress. Though pockets of resistance remained, the tide had turned, and the fortress buzzed with a newfound sense of purpose. The Queen and I grew closer, our bond transcending the boundaries of species and circumstance. She confided in me her dreams for her people, a future where they could thrive without fear, where the icy walls of their world would no longer isolate but protect. In return, I shared my own hopes, of a day when humans and her kind might walk side by side as equals. One evening, beneath the shimmering auroras, she took my hand, her touch colder than ever yet filled with warmth I couldn't explain. "You've changed everything," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. I smiled, knowing words were unnecessary. Together, we had faced the impossible and emerged stronger. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt limitless. And as the lights danced above us, I realized that mercy, once unexpected, had become the foundation of something extraordinary.